What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I'm going to be shooting my Marlin 1895 4570 at some half-inch drywall to see how many sheets of drywall a 4570 rifle can penetrate through. And I have a variety of different ammunition that I'm going to be shooting at the drywall. I have solids, I have expanding bullets, I have extreme penetrators and extreme hunters, hardcast bullets. I want to just show you guys the rifle a little bit more. So this was actually the first rifle that I ever owned, and it was a gift from my dad. At the age of 16, he purchased this rifle for me. I really wanted a big bore, and this is going back to 2001. And this is a 22-inch barrel Marlin 1895, and I actually extended the magazine tube. What I did was I purchased a spare magazine tube from the Marlin 1895 Cowboy, which is a 26-inch barrel version of this rifle with the octagon barrel, and I just trimmed down the magazine tube, and I had actually the gunsmith do all this. I didn't actually do that. So, because if I did it myself, it wouldn't come out super professional. I have an XS lever rail on this rifle and a Burris 2 to 7 power electro dot handgun scope. I got the Wild West Guns big loop lever. And of course I got the Mason leather cartridge cuff, which I highly recommend. Any of you guys out there that are hunters and you want to carry spare cartridges for your hunting rifle, I highly recommend you check out Mason Leather and get one of these cartridge cuffs. You can use my promo code NY10 to get 10% off. I've done a review of this cartridge cuff. These loops are just super heavy duty. As you can see, the leather is really thick. And I've had one of these on my elephant gun for over a year, actually 2 years, and I've hunted with it 2 seasons already, and the leather has not loosened up on the loops, and the cartridges just fit perfectly inside of these loops. Let me just give you an example here. So here we have a cartridge, and you can see it just fits nicely in there. It holds it just right, not too tight, not too loose. This is exactly what you want, especially for a big game rifle like a 4570, where you might have to use this for bear protection. You want to be able to pull out your spare cartridges quickly, but also you don't want them to slide out and fall on your trek through the woods. So let me show you guys what type of ammunition I'm going to be shooting at the sheetrock or drywall, and it's just standard half-inch drywall. And what I've done is I've cut it to 1 foot by 1 foot squares, and I'm going to stack them all together tightly in a wooden jig that I built to hold them all together tightly. So let me show you the ammunition and some of the ballistics on the ammunition I'm going to be using for this test. And if you're interested in seeing some of my other sheetrock penetration test videos, check out my drywall sheetrock penetration tests playlist, and I'll leave a link at the top of this video if you want to check those other tests out. I've tested 300 Win Mag, 416 Ruger Elephant Gun, 308, 10 millimeter, and also 12 gauge, 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, 44 Magnum, and I plan to do a bunch more, so stay tuned to my channel for more drywall testing. But let's take a look at this ammo and check out some of the ballistics on this ammo. Alright guys, so the ammunition I'm going to be using is a combination of bare loads and expanding bullets. So I'm going to show you guys the bare loads first. So here we have our Barnes Full Metal Jacket Flat Nose from Buffalo Bore, 500 grain full metal jacket with an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,600 50 feet per second, and an advertised muzzle energy of 2,931 foot-pounds. And I've actually chronographed this load out of my 22-inch barrel Marlin 1895, and it had an average velocity of 1,592 feet per second and 2,814 foot-pounds. And that's this one right here, okay? And it's not a standard full metal jacket. It's a special full metal jacket made for dangerous game. So the jacket is really thick. It's not like a ball ammo type full metal jacket. It's a special type of full metal jacket with a really thick jacket, okay? So that's one of the barrel loads. The other barrel load we're going to test is the Buffalo Bore 380 grain mono metal with an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,075 feet per second and a muzzle energy of 3,632 foot-pounds. And this is actually the deepest penetrating 45-70 round I've tested so far in all of my ballistics tests. This round penetrated through 10 Douglas fir 2x10s, which is 2 boards more than the 500 grain full metal jacket, which penetrated through 8 2x10s. And I've chronographed this 380 grain mono metal, and I actually got an average velocity of 2,020 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 3,443 foot-pounds. And then finally, I'm going to test the Buffalo Bore 430 grain hardcast, which has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,925 feet per second. And I've actually chronographed this load at 1,844 feet per second for an energy of 3,246 foot-pounds. And believe it or not, this round actually doesn't penetrate well in different materials because it's a hard cast bullet and it's being pushed to over 1,800 feet per second, which is too fast for a hard cast bullet. You can't push hard cast bullets that fast because even a hard cast will start to deform at the nose at those velocities. So because of that, I've had issues with penetration with this round, not enough penetration. So those are the bear loads that I'm going to be testing against the Sheetrock. Now let's move into the extreme penetrators and extreme hunters, which are a combination of a penetrator and an expanding bullet. All right, guys, so we got the Underwood ammo 325 grain extreme hunter. Has an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,275 feet per second. And that's this one right here. It's a solid copper bullet. And it's designed for a combination of penetration and also large wound cavities. Okay. And I've chronographed this load out of the 22-inch barrel at 2,158 feet per second for an energy of 3,360 foot-pounds. And then here we have the Extreme Penetrator from Underwood. This is a 305 grain brass solid, very similar to the Extreme Hunter, okay, but there's some slight differences. You can see that the Extreme Penetrator on the right has a little bit more of a flat nose than the Extreme Hunter, which is on the left. So the Extreme Penetrator is designed more for punching through barriers and penetrating, while the Extreme Hunter is designed more for creating large wound channels in game, okay? But the Extreme Penetrator is made of brass, while the Extreme Hunter is made of copper. So that's a huge difference because brass is harder than copper. So the Extreme Penetrator should, in theory, work better against harder objects. So the 305 grain Extreme Penetrator from Underwood has an advertised velocity of 2,350 feet per second. And out of my 22-inch barrel rifle, I have an average velocity of 2,243 feet per second for an energy of 3,407 foot-pounds. And finally, we're going to test some expanding bullets. Here we have the Buffalo Bore 405 grain jacketed flat nose with an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second for a muzzle energy of almost 3,600 foot-pounds. And that's this one right here. Kind of looks like the classic Remington 405 grain core locked. I think it's probably the same bullet that they use, but I've actually chronographed this at 1,977 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 3,515 foot-pounds. And then finally, we have the Hornady Lever Evolution. And this is a very popular round for the 4570. And this one is advertised to have a muzzle velocity of 2,050 feet per second. And I've actually chronographed this load at 1,934 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 2,700 foot-pounds. So guys, let's see how many sheets of sheetrock or drywall these different rounds can penetrate through. I'm really curious to see what happens and how the penetration compares to the 300 Win Mag, the 308, and the 416 Ruger Elephant gun. For all of my 4570 content, including chronograph tests of all these loads, check out my 4570 playlist, including all of my other 4570 penetration tests. So let's get started with the test, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Alright guys, first up is going to be the Underwood 325 grain Extreme Hunter. Alright guys, so now I'm going to take a shot with the 305 grain Extreme Penetrator. This is Underwood's flagship load, and this one is made of 100% brass. Let's see what happens to this sheetrock. Alright guys, so now we're going to hit it with my deepest penetrating 4570 factory load, and that's the Buffalo Bore 380 grain mono metal. This beast penetrated through 10 2x10s. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it can penetrate through. Alright guys, I had to take a second shot with the 500 grain full metal jacket from Buffalo Bore because the first shot exited out the side. Now we're going to do the Buffalo Bore 430 grain hardcast. Alright guys, so now we're going to do some soft points. We got the 400 grain jacketed flat nose soft point from Buffalo Bore. This one has an advertised velocity of 2,000 feet per second. And then we're going to do the Hornady 325 grain flex tip lever evolution. Alright guys, I got some pretty interesting results to share with you. The 4570 performed a lot better than I expected with the solids and penetrated really deep through a lot of sheets of drywall, and this is just standard half-inch drywall, residential grade, interior grade. It's not fire resistant or anything, it's just standard partition wall drywall, half-inch thick. So we're going to start with the jacketed soft points or expanding bullets. So the Hornady 325 grain lever evolution flex tip penetrated just 21 sheets of drywall, which is actually not a lot. That's about the same amount as a 44 Magnum or 10 millimeter soft point can penetrate, and I've done tests with the 44 Magnum and 10 millimeter, so check those videos out. And the 405 grain Buffalo Bore jacketed flat nose also only penetrated through 21 sheets. So I want to just show you guys up close what the bullets look like. okay, inside of the sheetrock. And what I'm going to do is pull these bullets out, take a closer look at them, take some measurements, weigh them, see what kind of weight retention they have. So we're going to take a closer look at all of these bullets, but right now I just want to show you how they look in the sheetrock as I found them, okay? And here's the back of the 22nd sheet, and you can actually see here that the jacketed flat nose from buffalo boar mushroomed up to an incredible size and actually punctured the paper of the back of the 22nd sheet, while the Hornady 325 grain flex tip just kind of left this bulge, okay? So the jacketed expanding bullets only penetrating 21 sheets. So now we have the Extreme Penetrator, the 305 grain Extreme Penetrator from Underwood. And this is exactly how I found it. Penetrated through 32 sheets. I was expecting more like 50 sheets with the Extreme Penetrator, but because of these cutouts in the nose, it kind of acts like an expanding bullet and slows the bullet down. And it was actually backwards. This is exactly how I found it. It was actually backwards, okay? It made a little bit of a hole in the 33rd sheet, but this is exactly how I found it. You can see this big indentation, but it was just sitting like that, okay, in a nose forward position. So that means that this Extreme Penetrator tumbled completely around, which is not good if you're going to be using this for bear defense where you need deep penetration in a straight line. These Extreme Penetrators are known to tumble because they're usually very lightweight and they have these cutouts in the nose, so that makes them tumble. All right, so 32 sheets for the Extreme Penetrator. And then here we have the Extreme Hunter, which penetrated 35 sheets, okay? And this is exactly how I found it. It was in a nose forward position just like that, okay? And it actually punched a hole in the back. So 35 sheets for the Extreme Hunter. And one thing you'll notice with this test is that the slower moving bullets actually penetrated deeper than the faster moving bullets. So the Extreme Hunter is about 100 to 150 feet per second slower than the Extreme Penetrator. And as a result, it penetrated a little bit deeper. Okay, and you'll see that as I move forward into the solids. Okay, so this was a very interesting surprise. I was expecting the 380 grain monometal to actually penetrate the deepest, because the 380 grain monometal in other media penetrates the deepest out of all of these. Okay, I've penetrated through 10 Douglas fir 2x10s with the 380 grain monometal, but inside of drywall it just doesn't penetrate as well, probably because of the high velocity and the lighter weight of the bullet. So it has a lower sectional density and it's traveling at a high velocity. So because of that, it has a tendency to tumble inside of softer media like drywall. But the 380 grain monometal penetrated through 50 sheets, okay? And here we have the 51st sheet right there, okay? And it kind of just barely punched the paper a little bit on the back of the 51st sheet, okay? And you can see it's a little bit sideways, all right? So we're going to take a closer look at this bullet, but that was pretty surprising. And then next we have the Buffalo Boar 430 grain hardcast, which I could not recover because it exited out of the 67th sheet, okay? And I was going to take a second shot, but I already disassembled my jig and I didn't realize that it exited out until I disassembled the whole jig, and it was getting late, so I didn't have a chance to take another shot. So we're just going to use 67 for the 430 grain hardcast. Okay, that's still a lot of penetration. And what's interesting about the 430 grain hardcast is in 2x10s, it only penetrated through 4 2x10s. So less than half the penetration of the 380 grain monometal, but inside of drywall, it actually penetrated significantly more than the 380 grain monometal, 17 sheets more than the 380 monometal, okay, which is really interesting. So, you know, doing these types of tests, you learn about bullets and ballistics and how different types of bullets perform in different media. One type of bullet might out-penetrate another type in certain types of media, but then if you go to a different media, the other bullet might out-penetrate the other one, okay? So this is why I do these tests, okay, and why I share them with you guys so we can learn together, all right? If I didn't do these tests, I wouldn't know all these things, okay? So the winner of the test is the Buffalo Bore 500 grain full metal jacket, which penetrated through 82 sheets of 1/2 inch sheetrock, guys. That is just insane. And it's actually holding these 3 sheets together. This is the 80th sheet, the 81st, and the 82nd, and it punched a hole in the back of the 82nd sheet. And you can actually see it's in a perfect nose forward position. It didn't tumble at all. So very impressive penetration with that full metal jacket round, and it actually has 600 foot-pounds less energy than the 380 grain monometal and the 430 grain hardcast, but it actually out-penetrated those rounds, okay? It's a heavier bullet, moving slower with lower energy, but actually out-penetrated the faster, higher energy bullets. And that's actually very common, believe it or not. Heavy bullets pushed to moderate velocities will actually out-penetrate lighter bullets pushed at higher velocities, even if they're solids. Okay, so if you take a solid bullet that's heavier and pushed to a moderate velocity, it's going to out-penetrate the lighter solid pushed at a higher velocity every time. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all these sheets one by one so you guys can see the damage that these bullets did to the sheetrock, and then I'm going to recover all these bullets, clean them up, and we're going to take a closer look at them. We're going to see how they expanded and see what kind of weight retention they have, so stay tuned. All right, guys, I'm going to go through all these sheets one by one now. So these were all my shots. This is the first sheet. I had to take 2 shots with the full metal jacket because one of them exited at 37 sheets. So this was the one that exited. This was the one that penetrated through 82 sheets. Here we have the monometal, the jacketed flat nose, extreme penetrator, extreme hunter, the 430 hardcast, 325 Hornady flex tip. So let's just go through these one by one. Here's the second sheet. And what's really interesting is in the second sheet, you could see this screwdriver mark from the Extreme Hunter and the Extreme Penetrator. That's really interesting. So you can actually see the 405 grain jacketed flat nose already starting to open up a little bit. You can see it's just a little bit bigger than the other holes, okay? Here we have the third sheet.
The 405 grain jacketed flat nose is really opening up compared to the 325 grain flex tip, which is interesting. And it makes sense because it's traveling at about 100 feet per second, actually 150 feet per second faster than the Hornady flex tip. You got the 2 screwdriver marks here. Here we have the fourth sheet. You can see the 325 grain flex tip is starting to open up. Look at the holes from the Extreme Penetrator and the Extreme Hunter and the Extreme Penetrators here. Look at these interesting wound channels here. Pretty interesting, but that 405 grain jacketed flat nose just left a massive hole, and we're only on the 4th sheet. Okay, look at this hole, guys. Absolutely insane. And look at that hole, exit hole from the 325 grain flex tip. Check that out, 5th sheet. Now the 325 grain flex tip is actually creating a larger hole than the jacketed flat nose. Pretty interesting. Here we have the 6th sheet. And look at the size of that hole from the 325 grain flex tip. Just absolutely massive hole. Here's my thumb for comparison. This is probably almost 2 inches in diameter, and this is why that 325 grain flex tip is just so effective against deer and class 2 game and even light class 3 game, because it expands so well. So excellent deer round, but everything else still passing through. Here's the 7th sheet. Here's the 8th sheet. Still got that screwdriver mark from the Extreme Hunter and the Extreme Penetrator. And now the 405 grain jacketed flat nose and the flex tip have around the same size hole. So pretty interesting. Here we have the 9th sheet. Here we have the 10th sheet. Wow, look at the size of that hole, guys. That is just insane. Here we have the 11th sheet. Here we have the 12th sheet. Here we have the 13th sheet. Look at the size of that hole. Here we have the 14th sheet. You can see that the Extreme Penetrator is now starting to tumble because it doesn't have that screwdriver mark anymore, but the Extreme Hunter still has the screwdriver mark a little bit. But look at the size of this hole from the 405 grain jacketed flat nose. I mean, that is just absolutely insane. Just a massive hole. That's like as big as a shotgun slug. Just absolutely insane. And here we have the 15th sheet. Here we have the 16th sheet. Here we have the 17th sheet. Here we have the 18th sheet. You can see the Extreme Hunter is starting to tumble now. The Extreme Penetrator is already in tumble mode. And you can see the Full Metal Jacket is starting to go off to the left and kind of veer off to the left, and then it's going to exit in the 37th sheet. Here we have the 19th sheet. Here we have the 20th sheet. 21. Looks like actually in the 21st sheet, the Hornady left its little polymer tip in the 21st sheet. The red tip, the flex tip. Here we have the 22nd sheet. 23rd. 24th. 25th. 26th, 27th. Here's the 28th sheet. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and you can see that Full Metal Jacket starting to go out. 35, and you can see it's kind of like sideways at this point. 36, 37. Okay, it exited out the 37th sheet. It didn't even break the paper on the back of the 37th sheet. But the rest are still going. The mono metal, the hardcast, and the other Full Metal Jacket are still going. 38. 39. 40. 41. 42. 43. 44. 45, 46, 47. You can see that 430 grain hardcast is all the way down here. It's moving down with each sheet. 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. You can see the mono metal already stopped. Okay, now we just have the Full Metal Jacket and the hardcast still going through. 54, 55, 56. Look at that 430 grain hardcast all the way down here now. 57, 58, 59, 60. Look at that 430 grain hardcast still going all the way at the bottom. 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, and 67. Kind of just bounced off the 67th sheet on the bottom. So 66 sheets actually, not 67. I just like to use the 67 number because 66 is an unlucky number. 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, okay, and then 83. It just left a little dent in the 83rd sheet. So let's take a closer look at these bullets now. So stay tuned.
All right, guys, so fortunately, I was able to recover these bullets, and it's very easy pulling them out of sheetrock versus wood. You got to kind of dig them out. But on the left, we have the Buffalo Bore 405 grain jacketed flat nose, and look at the size of that mushroom. That is just absolutely insane. Look at that expansion. And then on the right, we have the 325 grain flex tip. Look at the difference in expansion, guys. Just a huge difference. That extra 80 grains of weight made a huge difference in terms of expansion. I mean, just look at the difference, guys. You do not want to get hit by something like this if you're a big game animal. Just going to do a ton of damage. Okay, massive amount of expansion, but the Hornady flex tip peeled back completely. All the petals peeled back. You can see all of the petals just peeled back perfectly. So perfect mushrooming from the 325 grain flex tip. Let's measure the expansion on this guy. Still a ton of expansion, 0.78 inches. That is just impressive, guys. That's a lot of expansion. And then on the narrower part, you got 0.65 inches of expansion. So still a ton of expansion. So this is a very effective bullet for soft skin game, for deer and light class 3 game like mule deer. Even for elk, this would be very effective, because you got just some massive expansion here, and it just does a tremendous amount of damage. And that's why the 4570 is just such an effective big game cartridge, because of these huge bullets that are being thrown at moderate velocities. You get really good expansion, and you get good balance between recoil and knockdown power. All right, look at that perfect expansion on this flex tip. And here we have the jacketed flat nose. Check that out, guys. That is just absolutely crazy. Man, this is just insane. Look at that. Over an inch of expansion. That is just insane. Absolutely insane. Even at the narrow part, over 3/4 of an inch of expansion. Wow. That is just absolutely crazy. Crazy expansion, guys. So this is a very effective bullet for big game hunting, black bear, deer, elk. I wouldn't use it against dangerous game, but definitely for non-dangerous game, very effective. Even for bison, this would be effective. Just look at this. Insane. And then here we have the solids, guys. Here we have the 380 grain mono metal. No deformation whatsoever, as to be expected. Okay, perfect condition. Here we have the extreme penetrator. Okay, looks perfect. No deformation whatsoever, as to be expected. Sheetrock is soft. Here we have the winner of our test, the 500 grain full metal jacket. No deformation whatsoever. Okay, looks perfect. And then here we have the Extreme Hunter. also in perfect condition. So I'm going to weigh these guys now and see what kind of weight retention we have with them. All right, guys, I got my reloading scale. Got this 100-gram weight. We're just going to make sure that the scale is zeroed out. 100.01, so almost perfectly zeroed out. So let's start with the 325 grain flex tip from Hornady. 262.8 grains. Here we have the 405 grain buffalo boar jacketed flat nose. 364.7 grains. So very good weight retention on both of these. Here we have the Underwood 305 grain extreme penetrator. This is made of brass. Check that out. That's crazy. 303.9, so almost 100% weight retention. Here we have the 325 grain extreme hunter, solid copper. 324.5, almost 100% weight retention. Here we have the 380 grain monometal. 379.7. And then the winner of this test, the 500 grain FMJ, 499.5. So as to be expected, all of these solids basically had 99.9% weight retention. So this was a fun test, guys. I'm going to do more drywall penetration tests. Stay tuned to my channel for more 4570 content and more ballistics tests and penetration tests. You can find all of my 4570 content in my 4570 playlist, and all of my ballistics tests are in my ballistics tests playlist. Check out my sponsors. It helps out my channel, and the sponsors have some good promo codes for you. So use the promo codes. They're in the description below the video. All of my sponsors and the promo codes. Thanks for your support. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.